This is Rhonda Schur, the founder of Unleashing LinkedIn, where I get to interview all kinds of amazing guests in different fields. And today my guest is somebody who's actually a client and somebody who's pretty exemplary in the financial service industry. Her name is Lisa HALLAIAN. And Lisa, I hope I'm not destroying your name.
That was perfect.
Awesome. So Lisa's been in the financial service industry for over 30 years as an advisor, consultant, and a financial advisor. She graduated with a degree in business administration and finance, and she holds the prestigious Certified Investment Management and Accredited Investment Fiduciary designations, and those are not easy to get. As an advisor, Lisa provides her clients with a comprehensive approach to financial and retirement planning, investment management, asset protection, legacy goal setting, while always putting her clients' best interests first. She's a native Californian, and she serves clients throughout the United States. Lisa, I'm so happy to have you on the show. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Rhonda. I'm so happy to be here.
So, Lisa, I know that, as a financial advisor, especially in terms of LinkedIn, you have a lot of compliance requirements, and especially also, in what you can share. But while we're here today and we're in the midst of COVID-19, one of the things that I'm sure people are interested in finding out about is, what are the biggest concerns that people have, especially investors today, as we're in a world that's unrecognizable to any of us. Nobody ever anticipated that this is what 2020 was going to look like. So what is it that, as a financial advisor, that people are concerned about in terms of the investors?
Sure. Yeah, unprecedented times. Unbelievable. Who would have ever thought? So, there's a lot of concerns out there. We did have the election that was looming. That is behind us now. There's still issues with regard to that as to tax policies and things of that nature. But I think one of the things that that's on most investors' minds today is whether or not, should they invest in the market? Is it too high? Where do I turn to make investments? A lot of investors are also concerned whether or not they have enough coverage in terms of their insurance policies. So I've seen a lot of my clients have me take a look at their policies and see if they need additional coverage. Many of them have. In addition to that, other concerns would be probably one of the biggest is whether or not investors have enough money to retire on. And the closer they get to retirement, seems to be a very, very big concern. And so it's very important to keep that in mind and to review your investments and review what you have today to make sure you're on the right track.
So here's a question for you. When I phrased the question, I said, an investor. But how do you really define an investor? Because when I look at myself, for example, where, for me, retirement is probably 3 to 5 years off. I don't think I'll ever retire. But, I don't know that I consider myself an investor, but from the standpoint of working with a financial services professional like yourself, a financial advisor, would I be considered an investor?
You most definitely would be, yes. Anybody that is going to invest their assets for retirement, for savings, for legacy purposes, for grandchildren, educational purposes, they're definitely considered an investor. It doesn't matter how small of an investor or how big of an investor you are, but you're considered an investor.
And I think that's a really important clarification because the truth is that, we can look at millennials. I have a 31-year-old daughter, for example, who does very, very well. And, she probably wouldn't consider herself an investor. But the truth is that it would behoove her and a lot of young people that are doing very well, that are making good salaries, to consult with somebody like yourself to know how to plan for the future. Maybe, they don't want to wait until they're their parents' age to retire, right? They might want to do some other things. So, Lisa, we talked a little bit about, how you define an investor. And, if you think about it, there's a lot of people out there, like my daughter, for example, who's 31, who, they're making really good money. and they don't want to wait until they're, the age of their parents to retire, who are probably still working. So what advice would you give to somebody who hasn't even started to invest, and maybe the only thing they've done is they've participated in the company 401k plan? What would you sit down and say to those people, so that they can have the future that they actually imagine in terms of being retired financially free? How would you advise them?
Right. Well, I think first and foremost, it's important to have an advisor, somebody that you trust, somebody that you like, that can sit down with you and help you devise a plan. I know there's a lot of robo-advisors out there, Robinhood and all these other programs, but they've run into a lot of glitches along the way. So the best way to really get around that is to find an advisor, sit down with that advisor, have the talk, be able to communicate really what your goals are, short-term, long-term. And then in addition to that, devise a plan. How are you going to achieve these goals, and what are you going to do with savings? How are you going to save, and what are you going to do with those savings? And that's really the key. And then the goals are not necessarily set in stone. They can change along the way, and this is really a canvas that will be constantly evolving as life goes on. As life happens and life changes, we have liquidity events that happen along the way. We might have children that enter into the picture. There's a lot of different things that happen. So you want to remain flexible, and you want to be able to have that roadmap and be able to follow it, and then make sure that you're on track as you go. And if you have to make changes, you make changes. But that would be the best thing, is to have an advisor that you trust, and then be sure you create a plan and follow the plan.
So here's a question that I'm curious about. There are a lot of people out there that are super risk takers, and then you have these people that are, very, very conservative. And I've always been the person that's been on the conservative side, and so I'm curious, when you're dealing with clients, is that something that you take into consideration? And do you use a combination of different types of, what are the products and services that you recommend, as a financial advisor, that somebody, could potentially put into a portfolio?
Sure. So risk is really key, and it means something different to each person. Each investor has a different risk profile. And so I use software, and I engage my client or my prospect with that program, and we ask questions, and we delve pretty deep to that gut feeling and really have a full understanding as to what their risk tolerance is. And we devise this program, and with that, basically there's a risk score that comes from that questionnaire. And then we use that risk score in planning their investments and making recommendations. And we want to make sure that we adhere to that risk score. Because what that really entails and what that really involves is the fact that when we do have a pullback in the market, you don't want surprises. You don't want to look at your statement and say, gee, oh my gosh, what happened? How come my portfolio is down over 30% when my risk tolerance was much lower? So we target investments towards that risk score, and that is really, really key. That could change. It could go down. It could go up. But the most important thing about that is that you're able to be flexible with it, and you adhere to that risk score. So there are investments, and we put the investments in our program to make sure that they line up with the risk score each time. And we pretty much follow that.
I love that. I didn't know that there's software out there that actually helps you to do that. So I'd love to jump to another.
It's fantastic.
It does. It sounds amazing. So I have a question. This is something that I think a lot of people don't know about. When you turn 62, I believe it is, you're eligible, or is it 65, you can take Social Security. I think it's as early as 62, isn't it?
Well, sure. It can be. It depends. Yeah, it depends on your age. So, and that's the $1 million question, when is the right time to take Social Security? So it's based on the year of your birth. And so if you are born basically in the late 1950s, it's around 62 to 63. I'd have to know the year of the birth, and then I can tell you when your retirement age is. So mine is 67 and a half, and it's typically 6 months after you turn that number. So it's 67 and a half. And the golden question is, well, do I wait until that retirement age, or do I take Social Security now because I'm eligible? And the real question is, are you able to wait until your full retirement age? So that 67 and a half for me is, what is considered my full retirement age. The key there basically is that you are earning 8% every year that you wait. And if you can go beyond your full retirement age, it's even better because you're getting that extra 8% per year. So that's free money from the government, and it compounds. And when you look at the numbers in terms of how much you're going to receive beyond your full retirement age or at your full retirement age versus when you take it sooner, there's a very big gap there.
Yeah, I think that's something that a lot of people don't know. Even in our particular situation, the automatic go-to is, oh, okay, I'm retiring and I'm going to take my Social Security, not realizing that there's that 8% that if you have other places and you've worked with a financial advisor that's helped you plan and help you get set, you might not need to tap into that for a while. And also, you pay taxes on Social Security. Isn't that true?
That's very true. And so some people continue to work in retirement, and they forget that they're going to be paying taxes on the income that they're making from their employment. They're also going to pay taxes on the income from Social Security. And that's why I, as a rule, try to not only advise but incorporate retirement income from other sources, not 100% from retirement accounts that are qualified and tax-deferred. Because what happens in retirement for a lot of investors is their tax bracket increases because now they have a source of income all coming from tax-deferred accounts. If I can then put taxable monies in there, then that is actually a better way to do that. So you want some of your retirement money coming from those qualified accounts and then the other money coming from taxable accounts.
Yeah, and I think that's probably one of the most important reasons to, find a financial advisor that you trust, that you can go to. I think there's a lot of people out there, especially now, with all of the podcasts and so much financial news, where people are listening to these business shows and they're reading financial news. But, is that really enough? I mean, why is it so important to actually work with an advisor, and how early should somebody start working with somebody?
Well, I don't think it's ever too early. A lot of people feel that, I'm young, maybe I don't have as much money as I would like to start investing, but starting somewhere is always very, very important. The reason you want to work with an advisor is there's many reasons, but what's very important is to have somebody that can guide you. I've spent my career learning the markets. I have designations, so I'm doing continuing ed on an ongoing basis. I'm constantly reading. I'm constantly educating myself to be up to speed. And so that's something that I've dedicated to my career. It's very difficult to try to go it alone with just a little bit of information. It's just a small piece of the puzzle. It's not the entire full information that you need to make a solid decision. In addition to that, the number one reason why most investors do not attain their goals or have losses in their investments is because of the emotional aspect of it. In fact, most mutual funds and other vehicles that are out there, the portfolio managers do a wonderful job. They manage these assets. They deliver incredible returns. And a great deal of the time, more than 80% to 90% of the time, investors that invested alongside of them did not enjoy the same returns. And the main reason is that they get scared, and when the market declines, they sell, and they don't know when to get back into the market. In fact, a good example would be back into the financial crisis. So when we look back then, many investors got out, and they got out at the bottom. So they rode the market all the way down. They sold. They took tremendous losses. And the majority of those investors never really came back to the market. So if they had stayed within the market and not sell, a lot of those investors made all their money back and then some. We've had this incredible bull market. So it helps you to have an advisor that can guide you. It's no different than going to the doctor. Let's say you break your arm, you're going to go to a specialist so that they can guide you, and they're going to tell you, okay, I'm going to do surgery, or we don't need to do surgery, but I'm the specialist, and this is what we're going to do. You don't want to do surgery on your own, on yourself. So that's really the important part about having an advisor, regardless of your age.
So here's a good question. I love the analogy of talking to, going to the doctor. How often should you have that meeting with your financial advisor? Because we know that things do change. And I know from my own experience, that when you set expectations, it definitely helps. It's like, okay, some months you're going to see it go up and some months you're going to see it go down. And, it's based on what we've put